As a part of the conceptual class, we learned how do we handle the null values. Let us see all of them one by one as a part of our hands-on exercises. So the first one is coalesce. Let us see how do we use this coalesce function. First and foremost thing is, let us go ahead and create the data frames so that we'll be able to understand this clearly. What we have done is we have created a files which will help us to understand these functions really well. Let me go ahead and create a data frame. Coalesce. I'll copy this, reusing the code as much as possible. So I'll say infer schema 2, and then I'll say load. I got to provide the path where the file is there. So I'll show you the file so that you understand how the file is. This is where I have stored the file. CD. Okay, this is where I have file, and we have a couple of files here. One is check coalesce.csv. I'll show you how does it look like. This is how our file looks like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 columns are there. By using this file, we'll create a data frame so that we'll use the same for checking the coalesce function. And the name of the file is check coalesce. CSV. Okay. Let me go ahead and create the data frame from this. Okay, we are in Spark 3.4. Let's go ahead and paste this. So it's creating the data frame. We'll go and check what do we have in this data frame. It's already indicated while trying to show you the input file. We have 5 columns: employee ID, name, company, salary, and employee number. So there is a reason I have created these 2 columns here. We'll see that in a minute. You see, there are a lot of null values. All of them are intentional. Real data may not look like this, but just to demonstrate all the functions, we have created this particular file. Now, what coalesce function does is, it will select the first non-null value from a set of columns. Let us say set of columns here is employee ID and employee number. Let us try to construct this one first. So now let's go ahead and say check null. This is the function. We'll select that. What we'll do is we'll use the coalesce function. What very important thing is we need to import this function as well, right? Let's go ahead and import some functions from PySpark .sql .functions import coalesce xpr enstr. That should be fair enough for now. Let me go and import these functions. I imported them. Now, while we imported that, this is how coalesce, and we got to provide the columns on which we want to coalesce. Now, as I said, we have 2 columns more or less for the same purpose. The 2 columns being, I'll show you this coalesce. These are the 2 columns: employee ID and employee number. Copy this, and then column. As I said, always column, we should provide that in a quotes. Now coalesce is there. Okay. Now let us provide one more column, then employee number. These are the 2 columns we are trying to coalesce. Coalesce selects the first non-null value between these 2 columns and makes this one column. Let's go ahead and execute this. Then you will understand. If you see, there are a couple of null values here, but there are 2 values here. There are a couple of null values in this column, and there are values here. So the typical scenario would be whenever there is a merger of 2 companies. Now, if you see here, this is the original data frame where employee ID has couple of null values and employee number has couple of null values. So then what it does is coalesce functions wherever the first non-null value is there. In between these two columns, this is the first non-null value. Just it'll keep that. The same thing will be done between these two columns. For example, in this case, this is the first non-null value. Keep that one. So that is how it will coalesce the two columns and try to keep the first non-null value between these two columns. As I said, the scenario is whenever the merger happens, if you have a similar columns, but one of the column has a some values and another column has another set of values, in those cases, we got to use this coalesce functions. Wonderful. That is how we use the coalesce function. Now, let us go ahead and see the next set of functions. As we have already seen, drop is the simplest function. To say this, we'll create a one more data frame because this is going to be a bit cumbersome. I'll say check null df. So I will use this particular file now. This is how this looks like. It has only 3 columns. You can see we have tried to include all kinds of scenarios here in the same file. Use this file. There are 3 columns here. Let us read this and see how the data frame looks like. Paste this here and create a data frame out of this. Before you practice, you got to create a file like this and create a data frame. Play with all these functions. All of them are quite intuitive functions. So let me create this data frame. There you go. Let us see how the data frame looks like. As I said, we have 3 columns. You can see there are null values here and there. There is a reason we have put it like that. We'll see the functions one by one. The function what we are trying to do now is drop. Let us say this is a drop. Check null df and we'll say NA package we got to use. If you go and say drop, it drops all the rows even though one of the column has a null value. We have a null value here. We have all the null values. Wherever it finds a null, immaterial of other 2 columns may have the value, it's going to drop all those rows. You can see it, right? Here is a null, it has dropped that. All these values are null, it has dropped that. And wherever null value is there, even though null value is there in only one particular column, it is going to drop that particular record. Madhu, David, Kiran, Monica, these are the only employees where all the values are there. That is the reason it has kept that. Now, the scenario may be I want to drop a record where the null values are there in all the columns. So then very simple. All we got to do is we have to put all as a part of this drop. This drops only where all the columns has null values. This is going to drop only this particular row. Okay, we can see that now because we don't want to lose the data of the columns. You can see it, right? Dropped only one record from the original data frame. If you don't specify anything here, it means any column has a null value, it is going to drop all the records. This all, if you indicate all, drop only the records where all the columns have null values. Wonderful. Now we may say that no, why do we need to drop the records where null values? We want to supply something to them. Then fill function comes into picture. Fill acts according to 2 things. One is string and another one is the integer. Depending upon the column, we got to use this function. Very simple. We'll say check null df and then all we have to do is use the function na dot use fill. If you need to fill the columns which has a string value, provide the double quotes, supply something which you want to fill that particular column with. Let's fill the void. It will fill only the string columns because we are indicating it in a double quotes. Let us go and execute this and see how it is behaving. If you see, there are null values in the this salary column also, but it is not replacing that. It is not filling that. Wherever columns have a string type, in only those columns, wherever it finds a null value, it fills that with the whatever the string we are supplying here. So then how do we do with the integers? Very simple. Wherever you want to fill the null values where the column type is integer, all you got to do is take up this double quotes, assuming that let us say 100,000. This will only fill the column which has integers. Let us go and see this. There you go. You can see that there are a couple of null values in this salary column. Those null values are filled with this 100,000. This particular number, whatever we have supplied in this field. Wonderful then. Now, there may be a scenario where you want to fill only some set of columns, not all the columns. That also can be done. Assuming that your data frame has some 20 columns. You want to fill only specific columns with a specific data or specific string or specific integer. In that case, all we have to do is check fill for 2 columns. This is the string what we are doing, and then we got to provide the subset of columns you want to fill the null values with. So is equal to, then we have to provide that in a square braces. Here we'll say name and the company. Only these 2 columns will be filled with the value whatever you are supplying. Let us go and execute this. So if you have some multiple columns, only these 2 values will be filled with this particular. So for example, instead of having 2 columns, let us say name only should be filled. All we can do is we'll say most common name. Let's go ahead and execute this. It only filled this particular column, right? It didn't fill the company. This is how you can do. And one more thing is, here we are specifying the what is the string. It so happened that you want to fill different string or a different value for a different column. That also can be done. Isn't it Spark so flexible? It is. The way we can do that is, let us go ahead and create a variable is equal to, then I'll open what is the column you want to fill. Here let's say name, and name need to be filled with the most common name, and then we'll go ahead and provide the company need to be fill provide, let us provide Infosys. Okay, this is the variable what we have created. Now all we got to do is search check null na dot fill and provide this variable. That's it. So fill variable. So let us first run this. Then let us run this fill, the fill variable. Okay, let us show that. You can see, right? Wherever the null values are there in the name, that is filled by a most common name. Wherever the null values are there in a company, that is filled with the Infosys. This is how you supply a particular string for a particular column. That is how we can do it. So we have seen various options of the fill. The last thing here is we can also use replace. It is not only mere about only filling the null value. Sometimes we have to replace as well. In this case, it is replacing particular value with the another value. So how do we do that? Instead of fill, replace this with a replace. Replace. Let us go for a original data frame. So let me So check null dot show. Let us try to replace Girish with something else. The way we can do it is provide what you want to replace with. Let us say Girish. Recognize, I'll say some other name. And then we got to provide the column name as well. The column name here is name. Let's go ahead and execute this. You can see, right? This Girish is replaced by some other name. Wonderful. We have seen all the important examples of how do we tackle the null values in our data frame. Please do practice. Practice makes the man perfect. Thank you.